We were away last week. I actually wrote my sermon before I went away because I didn't know how much time we would have when we got planned. But something happened when we were down there that I thought I'd share with you, so I've extended the sermon a little, I'm afraid. It was last Sunday, at about the same time that you were all joining together here to worship, that Joyce and I went to a church along the road from where our grandchildren live. We've been before many times, and the service is very similar to our own, so it's comfortable. Perhaps we should have considered our options when our daughter-in-law told us that the church had a trendy new priest. He'd visited the children's school, so she'd seen them. Or perhaps when you checked the shiny new notice board outside the church for the service times and saw 9:30 contemporary worship with activities for children and young people. Or when we walked in and the congregation was sparse and the usual warm greetings were absent, and people were sitting around the church drinking coffee and eating croissants. We perhaps should have reconsidered our options when we saw the bank of speakers and microphones and other accoutrements. Our last chance came when a couple sat down in front of us and turned around and said, "You're new." And we said, "Oh no, we've been before, but not for a while." Oh, they replied, "It's changed, it's contemporary." Too late, we were in. The trendy new priest opened the service without robes and opened with, "We're a family-friendly church, so birthdays are so important. Is it anyone's birthday today?" And everybody looked down at the floor. "Okay," he said, "let's take our first hymn. And while we're singing, bring down your gifts to this bowl at the front." Electric guitar, flute with a microphone, 6 voices amplified through a bank of speakers launched into the first hymn. The tune appeared to change every verse, so there was no real pattern to follow. And it went on and on and on. Finally, the 5 singers stepped back to leave the lead guitarist strumming tunelessly on his guitar, looking down very thoughtfully. Then he stepped up to the microphone and I swear he put it in his mouth, because all that came out was and then he started strumming again, looking down thoughtfully. Then he walked back up to the microphone, "Jesus!" And then he walked away. During the song, the trendy priest handed a sheet of paper to one of the congregation, who at the end of the song stepped up to the microphone and basically said, "Let us pray for the people on the notices," and then sat down. So that was intercessions, I believe. Then another interminable song, and trendy priest told us at the end of it that for 6 weeks they'd been studying Paul's letter to the Ephesians, but that was coming to an end today with the last reading from Ephesians. I'll need to read it to you to let you know what it contains. "So that you also may know how I am and what I'm doing, Tychicus will tell you everything. He's a dear brother and a faithful minister of the Lord. I am sending him to you for this very purpose, to let you know how we are and to encourage your hearts." Trendy priest then treated us to a 25-minute sermon, which started with a wooden board, a glass paperweight and a house brick, which was his introduction to an explanation of the coefficient of friction. Left me cool. Then off on another interminable song, and it was during this song that our youngest, Fleur, escaped from Sunday school, and she came and stood in the chair next to me, so I was distracted, and I lost my attempts to sing along. It was then that it occurred to me why I wasn't enjoying the service. Our voices weren't needed, and they certainly weren't being heeded. We were being sung to and not with. And it made me think about 2 things. Firstly, our church here, and why it's so special. All of your voices are needed and heeded. We're lucky to be led by Andrew, but it's your voices and our hymns that are important. We have our wonderful choir. We have our meaningful intercessions. We have our readings from the Bible. Sunday school, and the PCC. Your voices in prayers and praise. Secondly, it made me think about the gospel reading today. I was very excited at delivering a sermon on this, the first day of the new calendar, the first day of the new church calendar. We've left the Gospel of Luke behind and moved on to the Gospel of Matthew. But more excitingly, as we've just seen, it's the first day of Advent and the start of the run-up to Christmas. To say that I'm like a child at Christmas is an understatement. If Joyce were here, she'd tell you that the Christmas tree is already up. The lights are on. The lights are on the tree outside in the garden. Most of the presents are bought, and all we're waiting for now is It's a Wonderful Life. All is anticipation. Anticipation is celebrating the birth of Christ 2,000 years ago, which is uppermost in our collective minds. And our church at Christmas is a wonderful place, with lots of good things to look forward to. But just as importantly, we are reminded by the word Advent that this is the season observed in time of waiting for the arrival of Jesus yet again. We have the nativity of Jesus and the return of Jesus at the second coming. The word Advent is from the Latin, which means coming. Now later on we will all say the Nicene Creed, and it contains the line, "He will come again in glory to judge the living and the dead, and his kingdom will have no end." So when can we expect it? No one knows. But every so often, someone will claim to have discovered a secret that indicates the date of Christ's return. And in 19th century America, there was an Adventist leader called William Miller. His followers were called Millerites. And it is in his movement that both Jehovah's Witnesses and the Seventh-day Adventists are rooted. Miller first predicted that Christ would return on the 3rd of April, 1843. And it said that there were over 3,500 of his followers jammed into the Boston Advent Temple, only to be disappointed. Instead of dying, the movement grew, and Miller decided to recalculate a new date for the second coming. When he didn't show up on that date, there was again frustration, and some followers did leave the ranks. But undeterred, he came up with yet a third date. It was publicised in the Millerite publication The Midnight Cry, and surprisingly, a number of people rallied. They began to spread the news of the new date of the second coming with enthusiasm that hadn't been seen before. Churches which didn't accept the message were denounced as agents of Babylon or the devil. And despite opposition from established and mainstream religious groups, thousands of people, including many clergy, began to defect to the Millerite cult. As doomsday approached, the Millerites began to prepare. One account of that time noted that fields were left unharvested, shops were closed, people quit their jobs, gave away their possessions with no thought of payment. Huge press runs of the Advent publication, like Midnight Cry, warned the public that time is short, prepare to meet thy God, and the Lord is coming. Miller himself began to sell white ascension robes to the faithful, many of whom waited for the miraculous event lying in freshly dug graves. But as we know, it didn't happen. In fact, if they'd read the words of Jesus from this morning's Gospel reading and believed them, they wouldn't have been taken in. Jesus said, "No one knows about that day or hour, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father." And Jesus makes it quite clear that there's nothing we can do about it. No amount of praise or prayer will make a difference. Our voices won't be heeded. It's never easy waiting for anything, and our modern society doesn't help. With all the time-saving devices that we have, microwave ovens and automatic washers and cell phones and Amazon next-day deliveries. We're used to getting things almost immediately. We forget to stop and look and listen. We forget to let God interrupt our plans so that we can see Jesus. Man has always been fascinated about his future. Pope Benedict the 16th, between 2005 and 2013, wrote in his book, Jesus of Nazareth, "In every age, man's question has focused not only on his ultimate origin, almost more than the obscurity of his beginnings. What preoccupies him is the hiddenness of the future that awaits him. Man wants to tear aside the curtain. He wants to know what is going to happen, so he can avoid perdition and set out towards salvation." Jesus said that people won't notice his return when it happens. We won't realise that things will change because of it. So it's important that we must always be ready for Christ's return. The end will be unexpected. God will come into the ordinary events of our lives. He doesn't want us to have a so what attitude about his return, but just as importantly, he doesn't want us to be afraid of it either. When Jesus returns, will we recognise him? Perhaps he'll be in the guise of a trendy vicar. The only way to know for certain is to continue doing what he wants us to do. In other words, we are to show his love to a hurting world by helping the less fortunate. The central theme of our reading from Matthew is promise. Jesus promised that when he returns, he will gather his people, and we don't need to be afraid of the consequences of Armageddon. He will return when we least expect it, and when he does return, we will have to give an account of how we've lived for him. If we're faithful, we'll be ready, and Jesus will see us doing his will, and in return, he will be with us.